Let's get more now from Donald Jensen in Washington, D.C. He's the director of Russia and Europe at the U.S. Institute of Peace. Donald, since the start of this war in Ukraine, we've seen U.S. military support in the billions, but it still is a small amount compared to what the U.S. spent on Afghanistan, Iraq, and going back a few decades, even Vietnam. But it has been even more successful than what we saw in those other conflicts. Why do you think that is?
Well, first of all, that amount expended so far has only been over 3 months. You have to compare it to the many years we were in the other places you mentioned. However, the differences are significant. Number one, Ukraine is a democracy supported by, according to polls, more than 90% of its population in this war effort. Second, the Ukrainians will fight, and that's obvious every day in the reports you just saw. And third, they have a very charismatic, popular leader. And so they are fighting for something. They're fighting for the land, as they always say. They're fighting for their homes. They're fighting for their families. The Russians, however, whatever you say about their military performance, are essentially expeditionary forces. They don't know why they're there. There are significant morale problems, and the Russians are trying to compensate for that, as you showed on your footage, by massive destruction, massive artillery bombardment, rockets, little of which have to do with the ability of the Russian soldier on the ground to do anything more than follow orders and take advantage of the destruction caused. So there are very, very different situations on the two sides now, and they're very different from Iraq and Afghanistan, about which you just asked.
Given the success that we've seen with Ukraine being able to hold back Russia fairly significantly, why do you think the U.S. isn't harming Ukraine even more heavily?
Well, I think I would go back to a widely read and very controversial op-ed in the New York Times on Friday, where the authors, the paper's editorial department, talked about the reluctance to provoke Putin, the reluctance to get into a direct war with Russia, the reluctance to have NATO and American troops on the ground. These are rationales that have a considerable merit. These are the grounds that have really kept the West, kept the U.S., kept NATO from giving the kind of weaponry that you mentioned. Now, that seems to be the policy at present. That will prevent Ukraine from counterattacking in the south. That will prevent Ukraine from pushing all the way to the Russian border, but they will not prevent Ukraine from giving the kind of fierce defensive operations that has slowed the Russians in many places and, frankly, has stopped them around Kharkiv and elsewhere. However, without the kinds of weapons the Ukrainians want, they are not going to be able to push south in Kherson and Mariupol, where your reporter talked about. So we are at this kind of stalemate for now, where we support them, we give them great weapons, but not enough to really conduct offensive operations against the Russian forces. That would include, by the way, aircraft. That would include other things that would allow Ukraine to be less defensive, where they've been done very well, but would allow them to go on to the offensive. And for now, at least, that doesn't seem like it's going to happen.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Donald Jensen joining us from Washington. Thank you.
Thank you.